Welcome to Why Book. Today we will talk about the book The Art of Self-Discipline by Kimberly Olson. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a young man named James. James had big dreams. He wanted his name to be famous throughout the village, to have wealth and success, and to make his family proud. But James's biggest problem was that he never worked towards his dreams. He had a habit of procrastinating. Every morning, James promised himself that he would wake up early. But when the alarm rang, he would turn over in bed and tell himself, "I'll start tomorrow for sure." Instead of studying or helping in the fields, he would waste time gossiping with friends. The villagers began calling him lazy and irresponsible. James kept telling himself that his situation was beyond his control. Sometimes he blamed others for his circumstances or said that there were no opportunities. But deep down, he knew the real reason was his own weakness. He needed a change in his life, but he didn't know how to do it. One day, the village hosted its annual fair. Everywhere, there were colorful lights, the smell of sweets filled the air, and the sounds of drums and trumpets added to the lively atmosphere. James was strolling around when he noticed a sage. The sage did not appear to be an ordinary man. His eyes were deep, and his face radiated peace. The sage had a small stall with a sign that read, "Do you want to know the secret of life?" James's curiosity grew, and he gathered the courage to ask, "Father, what is the secret of life?" The sage smiled and looked at James carefully. "Your eyes hold dreams, but your steps are stagnant," the sage said. James was stunned. No one had ever spoken to him so truthfully. He asked, "How do you know this?" The sage took out a golden piece of paper from his bag and handed it to James. On it, in large letters, it said, "Every miracle in life is hidden in discipline." James read those words several times and asked, "But Father, how can miracles come from discipline?" The sage explained, "Every great dream, every big success is built upon the foundation of discipline. If you want to change your life, you must first embrace discipline. It won't be easy, but if you're ready to learn, I can teach you 9 secrets." James realized this might be his biggest opportunity and hesitantly asked, "Will you teach me these 9 secrets?" The sage smiled and said, "Of course, but remember, just listening won't help. You must apply them in your life. Are you ready?" James took a moment to think. He had many questions. Would he be able to change his habits? Could he learn discipline? But then he heard a voice within him that said, "If not now, then when?" He replied firmly, "Yes, Father, I am ready." The sage smiled and said, "All right, the first step is to defeat procrastination. Let me tell you about it." That night, James couldn't sleep. The sage's words echoed in his mind. He kept thinking about how discipline could change his life. He promised himself that he would leave his old habits behind and walk the new path. He started planning to wake up early the next morning to meet the sage. Even as he lay in bed, he repeated the sage's words over and over. Every miracle in life is hidden in discipline. The next morning, he went to meet the sage. The sage looked at him deeply and said, "James, procrastination is not just a habit, it is an enemy. It keeps you away from every little and big victory." The sage then told him a story. A long time ago, in a kingdom, there was a warrior named Veer. He was so strong and clever that he won every battle. But he had one big weakness: he always procrastinated. One day, he received news of an enemy attack on the borders of his kingdom. He should have prepared immediately, but he thought, "I'll check tomorrow morning." The next day, when he woke up, the enemy army was at his palace gates. Veer quickly drew his sword, but it was too late. His procrastination had cost him everything. This battle was his last. James took a deep breath after hearing the story. He realized that his own habit of procrastination was causing him to lose small battles every day. He asked the sage, "How can I fight this enemy?" The sage replied, "The first step in defeating procrastination is to recognize it. Whenever you feel like putting something off, ask yourself, why? Then follow these 3 principles. The sage explained: 1. We often fear big tasks, which is why we avoid starting them. To break this fear, take small steps. Make it a rule to work on a task for just 5 minutes. Once you start, the task won't seem so difficult and your fear will disappear. 2. Focus on just one task at a time. Thinking about many tasks at once only confuses your mind, making you procrastinate further. Choose one task and start working on it. Only move on to the next one when the first is completed. 3. Set a specific time for each task. For example, I will work on this from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. If you don't set a time, the task will always get pushed to later. By setting time limits, both your focus and discipline will grow stronger. James took the sage's advice seriously. He set a small goal for himself. His first task was to fix the broken tools in his field, a task he had been procrastinating for months. He told himself, I'll start for just 5 minutes. Once he began, he realized it wasn't as hard as he had thought. 5 minutes turned into 15, and gradually, he finished the task. Afterward, James felt a glow on his face. He realized that the task which seemed like a huge burden was just a trick of his mind. The next day, the sage called James to a quiet spot early in the morning. The sun had just risen and the cool breeze refreshed the air. The sage took a deep breath and said, James, you've taken the first step in overcoming procrastination. But if you want lasting change, you need to work on your habits, because habits shape your destiny. James asked curiously, Father, are habits really that powerful? The sage smiled and said, Absolutely. What you do repeatedly becomes a part of your personality. Bad habits can pull you down and good habits can lift you up. Even an ordinary person can become extraordinary through their habits. Then, the sage gave James a mission. Wake up before sunrise every day and meditate for 10 minutes. Do this for 21 days, and it will be the first change in your habits. James accepted the sage's advice, but when the alarm rang on the first morning, his eyes felt heavy, and his mind told him to sleep for just a little longer. I'll start tomorrow, he thought. But he forced himself to get out of bed and try meditating. His mind was filled with many thoughts, and the first few days were extremely hard. But he kept the sage's words in his mind. Repeat the process of forming a habit. Slowly, his body became accustomed to waking up early, and his meditation sessions became easier. After a week, James noticed that he felt energized throughout the day. He was calmer, more focused, and his thoughts were clearer. He celebrated this small success. The sage also taught him to celebrate small victories, as it keeps you motivated. James set a small reward for himself. After completing 21 days of meditation, he would buy himself a new book. This thought gave him extra motivation. The sage also told him, if you want to get rid of a bad habit, replace it with a good one. Don't waste your free time. Use it for something useful. James applied this teaching to his life. Before, he would waste his free time hanging out with friends. Now, he started using that time to read books and write. Gradually, his daily routine changed. By the time he completed the 21 days, James realized that his morning routine had become his most powerful weapon. Waking up early and meditating had become a habit, and his mindset had shifted to be more positive. He was able to focus on his work better throughout the day. But one day, James' world was suddenly turned upside down. His best friend, whom he considered family, betrayed him. His friend had sold a large portion of his land at a cheap price without his consent. When James found out, he was furious. His blood boiled, his fists clenched, and his breath quickened. I need to take revenge, he told himself. Angrily, he started walking towards his friend's house. On the way, he met the sage. The sage sensed James's anger and asked, James, Why is your face so red? What's wrong? James angrily explained everything, saying, I trusted him, but he broke that trust. Now I can't let him get away with this. The sage listened quietly and then said calmly, anger blinds your mind. It takes away your ability to think clearly and make right decisions. If you're learning discipline, the first thing you need to master is control over your emotions. A decision made in anger often leads to regret. The sage gave James a mantra for controlling his anger. When anger arises, take 3 steps. 1. Focus on your breath. Take deep, slow breaths. This will calm your mind and give you time to control your anger. 2. Treat your anger as a story. Ask yourself why it's happening and what the cause is. When you view it as a story, it becomes easier to distance yourself from it. 3. Ask yourself, is this anger justified? Is there a solution? You'll often realize that anger is just wasting your energy. James listened to the sage's words, took a deep breath, and began reflecting on his emotions. The sage's advice helped him regain control over himself and avoid taking a rash step. He tried to calm the rising thoughts and viewed his anger as a story in which his friend had fallen prey to greed. Then he asked himself, is this anger necessary? Will it solve my problem or make it worse? The answer was clear. Anger wouldn't help him achieve anything. He thanked the sage and decided not to go to his friend's house. As James was learning the secrets of discipline, he began to feel changes in his life. But one problem still troubled him: proper use of time. James often said to himself, I wish there were more hours in a day, then I could get more work done. One day, he went to the sage and shared his problem. He said, Father, I keep running around all day, but still can't finish all my tasks. It feels like time slips through my hands. The sage listened carefully and then took out an old clock from his bag. The clock's dial was large and clear, and its hands moved slowly. The sage said, James, every minute is an opportunity for you. Don't waste it. Time is your greatest wealth. If you learn to use it wisely, all your dreams can come true. The sage explained that every person gets 24 hours in a day, but successful people use these hours wisely, while unsuccessful ones waste them. You need to keep track of every hour. Then, the sage taught James 3 time management principles. 1. Prioritize your tasks. First, the sage said, you need to decide which task is most urgent. You will always have many tasks, but if you try to do everything at once, nothing will be done properly. So, divide your tasks into 3 categories. O. Urgent tasks that need to be done immediately. O. Important tasks that are crucial for your goals but not urgent. O. Unimportant tasks that waste your time and energy. The sage gave him paper and asked him to list his tasks each morning and categorize them. He should start by doing the most urgent and important tasks. James tried this and realized that when he did the most important task first, the rest of the day was more organized. 2. Set one main goal for the day. The sage taught another principle: set one main goal each day, a goal that brings you closer to your bigger dreams. If you complete this one task by the end of the day, your day will be considered successful. On the first day, James set the goal of fixing all the broken tools in his field. The next day, he started preparing his field for new crops. Every day's goal brought him closer to his big dream. 3. Avoid time-wasting activities. One day, the sage took James to the field where there was a leaking water tank. Water droplets were dripping out. The sage said, "Look, this water is being wasted, no matter how much water you have. If it's leaking, nothing will be left." Then he asked, "What are the leaks in your day that are wasting your time?" James thought for a moment and said, "I often chat aimlessly with my friends, wander around without purpose, and sometimes waste time on social media." The sage said, Close these leaks. If you save time from these useless activities, you will have enough time for your dreams. James started applying these 3 principles in his life. He made a list of tasks every morning, set a main goal, and tried to avoid unnecessary things during the day. He began to see major changes in his life, but his biggest problem remained: lack of money. He worked day and night, but whatever he earned, it was gone before the month ended. Sometimes he even had to borrow money. One day, the sage called him and asked, "James, how much money do you have?" James's face turned red with embarrassment. He hesitated and said, "Father, I have nothing. Whatever I earn, it gets spent. Money never stays." The sage smiled and asked, "If you had water in your hands and there was a hole in it, would it stay?" James replied, "No." The sage nodded and said, "Money is like that too. Unless you use it in the right way and learn the discipline to manage it, it will never bring you permanent happiness or security." The sage then taught James 3 simple but deep rules about money management. 1. Save 10% of what you earn. The sage said, whatever you earn each month, save 10%. This will act as a security for your future. Whenever tough times come, this savings will be useful to you. Think of it like saving seeds for future crops. If you eat all the seeds, where will the next crop come from? James understood this and started saving 10% of his small earnings. Initially, it was hard for him, but as he made it a part of his routine, he could see how his small savings gradually turned into a larger amount. 2. Ask yourself if something is truly necessary before buying. The sage advised, whenever you go to buy something, ask yourself, is it really necessary or is it just a desire? Needs are limited, but desires are endless. If you keep chasing desires, you will never be satisfied. James realized that he often spent money to show off or for momentary pleasure. He changed this habit and now only spent money on things that were truly necessary. Slowly, he gained control over his spending. 3. Invest your savings wisely. The sage told James the story of a farmer who found a gold coin and buried it in the ground. After some days, a tree grew from the spot, and every branch had golden coins. If the farmer had spent the coin, the tree would never have grown. In the same way, money, if invested in the right place, can create more wealth. The sage explained how small savings could be invested in education, farming, small businesses, or productive work. The sage then gave James 50 golden coins and said, "This is your test. Come to me after 1 month and show me what you've learned from these coins." James saved half of the coins for his future security. He used some coins to start a small shop, selling daily necessities to the villagers. The shop gradually became a new source of income for him. He used the rest of the coins to buy books for the village children. He realized that helping others brought him true satisfaction. A month later, when James returned to the sage, he shared what he had done. The sage patted him on the back and said, "You have learned how to manage money. Remember, money is a tool to improve your life, but if handled without discipline, it can become a problem." One peaceful morning, as the first rays of the sun bathed the village in golden light, James approached the sage. The sage looked at him and asked, "James, do you know what your greatest wealth is?" James quickly replied, "I have wealth, time, and education. These are my greatest resources." The sage smiled and said, "No, your greatest wealth is your body. If it is not healthy, no amount of wealth, time, or education can help you. With a weak body, you can achieve nothing. If you truly want success, take care of your body first." The sage gave James a new mission. Wake up every morning before sunrise and do 30 minutes of physical exercise. This will make your body strong and keep you energized throughout the day. The first morning, when James heard the alarm, he felt like staying in bed, but he reminded himself that this was the sage's command, and completing it would be his discipline test. He got up and went outside, but his legs felt heavy and he thought he couldn't run for long. The first few days were tough. He would get tired quickly, but he didn't give up. He told himself, "I will do this slowly, but I won't stop." After a few weeks of practice, he became accustomed to waking up early and running. He felt his body getting lighter and stronger, and he had more energy throughout the day. He felt happier and more positive. One day, when James shared his experience with the sage taught him 3 important rules for health. 1. Fuel your body with the right food. The sage said, just like a car needs the right fuel, your body needs the right food. A balanced diet contains all the necessary nutrients. Eating too much or too little can harm your body. Eat mindfully and include fresh fruits, vegetables, and grains in your diet. James realized that he often ate fried or unhealthy foods, which made his body weak. He changed his eating habits and began consuming healthy and nutritious food. 2. Exercise daily. The sage said, your body is like a machine. If you use it daily, it will function well for a long time. But if you leave it idle, it will deteriorate quickly. James, in addition to running, started doing yoga. Yoga not only made his body flexible, but also calmed and stabilized his mind. 3. Rest is as important as work. The sage explained that discipline isn't just about working hard, but also about resting at the right time. When you give your body enough rest, it will work more effectively for you. Previously, James used to stay up late and feel tired in the morning, but now he made it a rule to go to bed on time and get at least 7 hours of sleep. He noticed a significant improvement in his productivity. James had now mastered many aspects of discipline. He had learned to manage his time, habits, health, and money. But one day, the sage asked him a question that shook him to the core. The sage asked, "What is the purpose of your life?" James paused. This question was so simple yet so profound that he couldn't answer immediately. After thinking for a while, he said, "I want to be successful and wealthy." The sage smiled gently and said, "Success and wealth are the results of discipline, but they are not the ultimate purpose. The true purpose of life is to contribute to others and help make the world a better place." James understood the sage's message and made a new commitment. He promised to use his wealth, health, time, and discipline to help others and make a meaningful difference in the world. He knew that his journey had just begun. I hope you liked this audiobook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like and share the video if you enjoyed it. See you again with the next audiobook.